Welcome, it is class 9 for the collective logic life forces. So we're going to be diving right into looking at what the collective circuitry is all about. And even graphically you can see it sort of holds the world together. It's visually the outer shell of the body graph. And it's really giving us this world that we live in. And it's all about patterns and collective progress through sharing. And it offers us a pressure, obviously there's, pressure centers involved. It offers us pressure that really drives us towards the throat center. That's, where the movement in the collective circuitry is going. It's going for progress. It's going for collective movement and bringing it all together. And so the patterns and the progress through sharing is how we continue to all move together and make progress. Notice that there's no tribal circuitry, of course. There's no individual circuitry. That makes sense. And since the ego is really the center of the tribe, it's not a part of the collective circuit. So that's, again, one of the things I've really got because of the way I think in patterns is I look at patterns that show what there is and also what there isn't. And it gives so many insights. When you look at this circuitry, it's made up of both of these two different circuits. They have a very different frame of reference and the way the energy operates. And so you can see that the collective circuit group is made up of understanding and also the sensing circuits, both of which are major circuits, because again, you can't see that one is configured any differently than the other. They're really mirrors of themselves. And so the logical side is the experimental side. It's sort of that side that we always sort of think of as very scientific, logical, and it's focused on identification, a focus on something. That's a really big word, and a clue. And so then you've got the abstract side, which is very experiential, very different than experimental. Experiential is really this very not focused on identification, but receptive to the developing and developmental maturing through, how you navigate through time based on expectations and experience. So life is all about our collective relationships, and all of us being nine-centered beings, but with different configurations, will be actively a part of the world that we're all experiencing, and some of those aspects are very collective. So we have the development of our collective consciousness, but it's clear that none of that can happen alone. Our ability to articulate is and be understood by another to make sense to others is critical. We are a binary consciousness. We've got that personality side, we've got the design side. Both of those don't do the same job. So when we look at the collective nature of this circuit, then obviously the logical experimental side won't do the same job as the abstract reflection on experiences side. They don't have the same job. They have a very unique way they see things. See is one of those senses that belongs to this circuit group. So if we go back to the picture, this maybe you notice something a little different about the picture today. The word future that is showing the pathway, or the circuitry there with all the cars moving along the road, it's moving towards the future. We can see the front of the vehicle, and it's really moving forward. And yet if you look at the image on the right-hand side, even the words I've sort of distorted, because you don't really know what they've experienced, where they've been. All we're doing is looking in the rearview mirror. Rearview mirrors don't show the whole picture, do they? Now, again, it took years for us to have progress. It took years, if you look at this picture, to have an infrastructure built and a means to really relate to others in a way that we understand. It's always interesting to go back and to look at old documentaries. First of all, you notice the technology back on those old documentaries is quite different than today's very modern photography and cameras. You know, you can even watch an old show they would have filmed from maybe World War II, and it's sort of crackly and black and white and flickering and all of those things. I mean, just everything around us, you know, we see is meant to continue to be refined. Come on in, Yi. So we look at all of this progress and infrastructure, and it gives us a way to relate to each other, and we progress despite geographical barriers over time. You know, without these vehicles in this picture, nobody's going anywhere very fast. I lived in a home that I sold last, I guess was in 2015, and it was on a hillside overlooking Silicon Valley. And that home, not that exact home, but the home that had originally been built on that property was what they call a summer home for those people that lived in San Francisco. You know, this is back in the days they had to go places with horse and buggy, and they literally would take whole days to, you know, go from what now you could get to San Francisco from that place in about an hour in a car. And they would take a whole day in their horse and buggy to get to that property to, you know, take their vacation. You know, it was so far away in that time. And now it's just, you know, it's what people do to commute. So when we look at these geographic barriers, look at our class. Look at who's here today. What's brought us together? The internet, this global society beyond our own village, this leadership of, you know, the tribe that comes from tribal circuitry has really lost its power to the leadership of the collective. The individual creativity is required, kind of required in an integration with other energetic circuitry and pathways is what we've been looking at before. You know, the knowing, the centering, even the aspects at times of integration channels. They've all contributed to the impact and the direction that the collective and tribe has been going in. But today we're going to focus on the future. We're going to talk about the collective logic. So logical circuitry, now it's always sort of dramatic to say the most important circuitry, but it is when you read it in the context of the sentence. It's the most important circuitry that we have in the form, in life, you know, to be alive, you know, and existing as a bioform. There is an important aspect of being a bioform. The logic circuitry is a unifying thread among all life forms on the planet. There is one thing that all life forms have in common. It's the 15-5 being in the flow, the rhythm and flow of life channel. It's the heart of the logical process. It's this life force that gives an indication of the importance that logic in the world has for all life forms. It's setting their formula that is predictable, reliable, and offers what their rhythm and flow and frequency is all about. the human design system is a logical system. That's why you keep hearing, over and over and over. Don't trust it. See for yourself. Follow your strategy and authority. It's a mantra almost. It's demanding that the rules of logic be fulfilled, experimented with, tested before you will be able to experience the validity of it. So the foundation of logic is that you have to experiment with this formula. You have to test it. You have to see how it works and get the details in order to be able to influence the collective so that they feel secure. That's what logic allows. When you can test something and find it reliably certain that maybe the variables in the formula get added or subtracted or changed or mixed up. But the result, if the formula is correct, is you should get a predictable outcome. And if you do, that there's no doubt. There's only a feeling of certainty and more of a security about what you can predict for the future, what you can see that might happen for the future. So the deepest dilemma for the understanding circuit is that it's starved for energy. Why is that a statement? Because if you look at that, come on in, Rick. If you look at that, it's the only circuit group with gates in the throat with no connection to a motor directly. I mean, if you're going to manifest something and the whole flow and pressure is to get to the throat, once you get to the throat, if you're sitting here on the understanding logical side, you have to look around and say, ooh, but I don't have any energy yet, all by itself in the throat. I need energy. I need fuel to transform what we can express out of this throat. So logic has three voices, and none of them have a direct access to manifestation. Makes it easy for logic to talk. It makes it easy for, it to say what it sees. It's more difficult for the logic to experiment. This is the basis for all this great debating, all the collective opinions and ideas and facts and details that are thrown around in a debate. In times it's just arguing to find a that you find in any kind of a logical expression. It's just about sharing opinions and versus ideas. Ideas nobody disputes. An idea is just an idea. You can throw an idea on a piece of paper and you can add a whole bunch of ideas and nobody really says what's good or bad. They're all good ideas. They're just different. But opinions get much more focused on really trying to prove and support your own opinion about something, so everybody will accept it. So these are the the actual channels, the life forces, and we'll just look at them in sort of the big picture right now. It's very, again, human design as a system is a very visual system. And it's always interesting because when you look at the picture now, you probably have always sort of wondered the first time you started looking at it broken apart, why do the pressure centers, why are they off the path, so to speak? They look like they're not in the same flow as the rest of them. They kind of crossed over into the other side. I always thought that was really odd. But again, there's a fueling of understanding that does start with more of an abstract approach, more questioning, without knowing what the conclusion is, that comes from, the fuel of the logical mind. You know, if you look at the 63 and the 4, that logic, it's a design of mental ease. You're not really worried about anything until what? Until suddenly you start wondering about whether the answers to the formulas are still, clear. Once they don't become so clear, so certain, it kind of creates this imagery that's more abstract, full of doubt. But it's still fueling the identification of what needs to be clear. So you go back to that mental ease. When you look at the root center, this is the format. This is what's creating the fuel of the logical pattern into the future. This is what influences the whole design. If it's the part of your life force, this is focus and concentration. It's kind of nice to have focus and concentration. And what does that mean? It means you're taking the energy of the root center and the sacral center, and you are concentrating and focusing it so that you don't waste any energy. You're starved for energy in this channel. You need every bit. You need such a focus. You know exactly where to put the energy and not waste time on anything but that. So it's, again, allowing that clear focus of energy. Now, if you move into that sacral, what you start to see is the power of how the frequency of sacral energy works. It is a whirlpool that attracts, because I'm not sure this is going to work. I'm still sort of learning some of the different animation tools, but let me try. I don't know if I'd like to draw. I don't know. Let me just see what happens. So if you start here in the root and you move up, what happens is you are now in the whirlpool of the sacral life force, and it moves over into what starts the pattern and flow for logic. It's creating that generator aura, magnetic aura in this case, that's drawing everybody else collectively into the flow. It's operating out of response. And so again, you can be a whole bunch of people in a crowd, and someone walks in with their 15 and their 5 rhythm and flow, and all of a sudden the flow, kind of moves unconsciously towards whatever that flow is, just like a river. You can imagine, the influence that can have. So if you're doing this, kind of movement, and I'll just, even though we're not talking about abstract today, you start the process of an abstract moving across into another direction. Whoops, shouldn't go there. And then you've got the energy that goes straight up the middle. And then you've got tribal energy that's moving through and passing through this frequency. What you're creating is that movement and whirlpool that is really, again, through the strength of the force of and concentration of the logic, is creating a movement. It's creating that attraction to the sacral energy and frequency of life. So we can go from this rhythm and flow and get up here to the alpha, which is all about leadership. It's the leader of the collective understanding circuitry, and it's either a good leader or a bad leader. You won't know at this point, because all you're doing is really focusing and concentrating on the future. This is the person that seems to have the plan, seems to know what's wrong in the pattern that needs to be fixed, and that's what they're going to use as their platform for getting elected. This isn't someone who can make it happen. They don't have a motor to the throat. The totality, the collective, has to to really elect them to be the leader, see and understand that they want to follow this person. So Yi says that 63-4 logic, but the book says 64-47 is logic. Is that what you're communicating, Yi? You know, you are the one that knows this is real. This is where it belongs. So what you're seeing, and I'm so proud of all of you for pointing out, something's not quite right here. You're right. If you can see it, you know they've made some typographical errors. I would like to address, though, the question about integration, having the major circuit group that was individual, because that actually, it's not, it doesn't belong to, it's not a circuit. Integration is, you all know that, and it even says that it's an integration channel. But it is an integration channel in which it integrates with the major circuit of individual. That's why they said it, but they said it in a way that's obviously not clear unless you are clear the difference between integration channels and the circuitry and the channels of individuality. So thanks for bringing that up. I don't remember if I had addressed that yet. I had planned to, but I got, I don't know if I actually posted that. But yes, that's true. Exactly true. This is part of logic, and the 6447 is not. It's abstract. And so if you look at again at the alpha, this 7th gate is a roll gate. We'll talk about it when we get to that channel today. And then how do we move this forward in towards an awareness? Well, I'll clean up my drawing. And, you know, again, we've stopped at the throat here. Let's go back to the root center and see what is the other pressure that is coming through this circuitry. It's this one. It's the 18 and the 58. It's the channel of judgment. This is a part of the collective process. This is correction of a pattern so that we'll have a better tomorrow. And it's a correction of a pattern that will never end because it's focused and concentrated on correction. As soon as you correct it, there can be more to correct. It's insatiable. And that insatiable seeing of patterns and how to correct those patterns can lead to this channel. What is, you know, again, instinctively a part of a pattern that, again, through expressing its awareness over and over and over, you can create a creative way to really set that expression of the pattern out into the world for a wide variety of situations that happen in the now. Because again, this is a splenic center, so whatever is happening in that moment, if you've got a handle on all of the different patterns that you could follow and how to deal with that with the right solution, then you've mastered, you know, the ability to express what to do in that moment with that pattern. It's considered a talent. It's going to be something that other people see and recognize. It's a projector channel. Now, if we go back, and I'm just going to clear this again, if we go back and look at that mental pressure, all this 63 and 4 channel of logic is doing is inspiring the thinking about something that is not understood so that it could be put into a pattern, a conceptual pattern that's organized and delivered through its expression of the throat in a way that can be accepted. a design of an organizational being. So we're looking at those. And here's the mandala. And here's all of the various gates and where they appear within the different aspects of the quarters, and just the whole layout of, you know, how everything interrelates. And so, you know, again, if you look at logic, and you can see there's no ego. In the logical side, there's also no emotions in this circuitry. This is a useful for a person who's constantly experimenting and looking for some new outcome. You don't have an attachment. There's no expectation. You don't, you know, sway the facts and details by, you know, expecting something and then looking for how to get it. That's not objective. It's very non-emotional. Logic is very dry. We call emotions kind of juicy. Well, this is the opposite of juicy. This is dry. There's no real energy behind it. No juicy energy that move things in ups and downs and feelings. And so you again go back to how it's starved for energy, because you're really not invested in the outcome. Your emotions are not easily stirred over here. You know, it's the way we envision real pure scientific research. It's just about the facts, hypotheses, test, and see what happens. And then, you know, keep experimenting in lots of different variations to see if it continues to still hold true. So it's allowing you to persevere through the whole experimenting process. And regardless of the obstacles you meet, you just keep experimenting. Without a solar plexus involved, there's really no time frame involved. There's no middle, or rather beginning, middle, and end. No, it's one direction. It's moving forward, always, always, always. That's why science never goes to sleep. It just keeps coming up with more and more and more different things that we can make progress with. And so finding the right formula is a repetitive task. You just keep at it until you find the right outcome. And then once you find the right outcome, you want to have an even better outcome. So you just keep going over the process over and over and over and over. And there's no perspective need that gets fulfilled that is then fulfilling the experiment. There's always something more. So logic is the fact that, you know, the true collective circuit is something that can be transferred, you know, collectively to other people, but it's also a circuit that demands collective cooperation. You know, one of the things, if you think about space travel, it's one of those rare areas where, you know, countries, you know, almost, it's like we can have our different tribal competitive natures as countries. And if there's a race, you know, to, you know, race to the moon or race to Mars or race to wherever you want to go, then the political leaders, you know, that are very emotionally attached to being the one that is going to win the race, they may want to keep secrets. But that's not what the scientists do. The scientists share everything they're learning and finding, and I mean, it's the nature of science. Is to continue to experiment and to make sure everybody has all the facts and details so that the progress is made and you're not having to reinvent the wheel. So there's a different goal. And, you know, again, that's everybody's efforts is what it's going to take, because there's not a, you know, you run out of energy, you run out of resources if you don't all pull together through cooperation. There's no way in which logic can properly manifest without cooperation. And so remember that logic is what keeps us comfortable with the future. It gives us a sense of certainty, or rather security, to keep going forward. You never give up. So I'm going to share with you just in this particular lecture today, just another fun fact. There's different time pressures. Time, what is time? Is sort of one of those profound questions. But there's a drive when you are looking at the concept of time that you can also just sort of watch and see. And one of those is that for logic, there's a pressure to be punctual, to be there not late and not early, but right on time, right in a certain rhythm and flow, because that's predictable. And the timing has to be predictable so you can repeat the pattern. Abstract has a time pressure too, but it's one that is got behind it an expectation. Any kind of pressure coming from the root center to the abstract side, moving up towards either the solar plexus or just to jump into experiences, you don't want to miss anything. There's that expectation that, you got to get there because there could be all kinds of juicy stuff happening right before it starts. And then the individual time pressure, it is really just now. It's just, I want it now. Almost, at times, this feeling that if it's not there, I'm kind of sad. And if I'm, there, I'm excited. And, you just wanted to, it's just the present moment. And then the tribal time pressure is much more relaxed. It's really not about getting anywhere. It's just about all coming together, a more ritualistic way of coming together. And so when it's the right time, we'll all get there. We'll all be there. I've watched the mechanics of all of this with all the characters in my family. We all come from different places. So the way we've had to resolve setting our schedules, if we had like an important family event or a meal together, is there's always, you got to tell a person when not to show up so they don't come too early, and when a person, really has to be there if they want to eat together, and we don't expect that all of them will get there. And so my sister learned, she's very logical, she learned basically, and she had to plan all the timing of the meal. She would say, show up at between such and such and such and such. So she set a time period, knowing that that way someone couldn't show up before that. And she would assign the person to bring something that's needed, like an appetizer, so that they would be sure to be there on time for those that would show up on time or early. And then she would say when not to show up. And then she would plan somewhere in the middle of all of that when we would really eat, because she knew the characters. She knew who was going to always be late. She knew who was going to be this or that. And so she was creating the tribal, let's all come together. And I've got some kind of idea. And I've also got some kind of plan on when we're going to come together. You can see it. You can see it operating. So let's go with the root center concentration, this design of determination and focus. And let's start with where it begins in the root center, and that is this gate of this pressure, and it's a pressure to focus. It's not focused yet. It's just a pressure to focus. And so what does it need to do? It needs to calm all of that distracting energy. It needs to come from a place of stillness, no movement, but a mountain. It's actually the gate of, the mountain. And it's a mountain that you can look at in the distance, and it looks still. It looks like it's not making any motion, but it's growing and expanding and changing. It's just so focused and concentrated over so much time that it looks in the moment still. You got to tame the distraction of restlessness in order to prepare for the long drive around this circuit that's going to need every bit of the energy. If you can sit still, you can focus the concentration on just what is there to be focused on. So the 9 is not focused and still. It's there with an energy for the details and the focus, just not necessarily able to sit still, you know? I watch this all the time because I've got the 52, so I'm watching all the people who would love to hook up with my stillness, because it's only through my stillness that they can sit still. Otherwise, they're restless. They got to move. They got to use that energy that's got an energy for focus and details, and find a way to funnel it, because it's just restless. And again, I showed you how it crosses over and creates that strengthened response, because this is a generator channel. So it's determined, it's focused, it's in response to what life brings. Life will bring things to focus and concentrate on. Life will bring something that needs to begin the process of focus, and really without any particular outcome in mind, just a response element that lets you see what you are really interested in putting your focus, concentrated energy into. So you see for yourself what you respond to, and what you respond to is where you'll focus and concentrate your energy. So it's going to influence, because it's setting up a frequency, a life force format that will be activated. And it's going to set the course of where you're putting your energy at that moment, that can, somehow, some way, hopefully express itself in the future. And, there's always that visual movement forward. Makes sense? So this is what's setting up this locking in of how we're going to try to preserve our precious energy along all the possibilities that could come along. And it's just a logical pressure. There's no ties to the tribe. It's not personal. It's just a focusing mechanism. It's a fixed focus. It's cool. It's not hot. It stays with it, digs in, gets into the details. This mechanism is built logically in and into life, and life is lived there. Once you're involved in it, it can get kind of abstract, but right now the starting mechanism is to bring a focus and to offer the potential in the future for security. And so that's what this is about. And now we go into this rhythm, and this is the flow. This is the generative life force flow, and it has a fixed pattern. Just like any river that's flowing, there is a flow to it that's fixed. It's got boundaries. It's got, banks that keep it moving, not spreading out broadly, but focused and concentrated as it moves forward. And whatever it's moving forward with, if there's a big force to it, a lot of pressure in that direction, a lot of speed in that direction, everything's getting swept in that direction that comes, in contact with it. So the 5th gate that has the response, it's a response that is in the life force that fixes the pattern to it. It's called waiting, which is a great name because you are waiting in life, but you're not sitting there doing nothing. It's the active waiting for the pattern to fix, and then off you go in response. That's a gate I have, and I do watch my own responses to life have its own fixed pattern, and you can't fight the river. It becomes a routine. It can change. I notice that my routines, like I have a fixed routine for lots of things that are sort of biologically oriented, like sleep. I can I can set the alarm just to be on the safe side, but I've got my own biological rhythm in when I'm going to wake up, and it'll vary a little bit based on, the seasons. If I'm in winter or if I'm in, summer, it just varies, but it's fixed. And if I try to do things outside of my fixed pattern, I can get exhausted, or I can, it messes with what I'm responding to and my available energy. However, there's the 15 on the other side, which is really there in the G center, that's really all the different um, extreme frequencies that make up us as humans, all the different places, all the different things, that doesn't want to be fixed into a rhythm, doesn't want a set pattern. How do I know that? Because without the fixed pattern, it goes to extremes. It goes all over the place. It goes through many, many different variations, and it's quite happy to do that. It just goes with whatever the pattern is in that place and that time. My sister has that. I have the fixed pattern. She never has a fixed pattern unless I'm around. and then the whole family. The whole family. Well, it's so interesting for you to look at your charts and see, because what you think about it could be that you just have a different pattern than someone else's, or a different routine that is also in the pattern. And when again, look at your chart, you can't separate the rhythm from the pattern, because that was just looking at it at the gate level. And this is not a gate. This is a life force. So your rhythm is got its own fixed pattern of extremes. Does that make sense? It's both. It's one of the many, many, many different expressions of this life force. I mean, we have so many. Anyone that's got the 5 and the 15 is creating that rhythm to everybody in your life, whether you recognize it or not. You're conscious of it. You can't change it. You are who you are in response with it. So this is, again, we're surrounding wherever we are, that whatever place we set is giving people a flow when this is present. So it's a response. It's a generator energy. I'm sure this is another reason why Rob really focused a lot on waking up generators, because they were setting the entire frequency and flow and rhythm on the planet. There's an understanding, and sharing to this particular movement. And it's a tantric channel of understanding. It is one that you sometimes read in one of the manuals, and it says it has a larger aura than other channels. Well, that's sort of this visualization of, you can imagine this picture of an aura, and people think it's so much bigger than someone else's aura. Well, it's got a much more magnetic quality to it. Think of the tantric nature in human design as directional, that it's really setting up the path and directional movement of the life. That's what it's really connected to in terms of human design. I asked Ra that exact same question because I was always, kind of curious about that. And so you really are combining the expression of the two centers, and that's really what it's referring to. So this is the understanding rhythm. And so when you look at it, it's this power of the pattern of the future, the flow of life. It's the direction of life, the river of life, the identifying focus with the flow. It's also this surrender, just surrendering to being human. You can love humans and you can hate humans in this in this particular pattern. It's all about our humanity. So our collective potential and place in the flow is really here. In the flow, again, our outer authorities that all come together will merge and will share them. And it's not about right or wrong, it's just about an expansion. You can't fight the river. Thousands of patterns are in the flow. Flow is a divine power of purpose. Our inner authorities navigate through the flow. And then when we're in the flow, our outer authorities all merge and share and experiment and offer each other our different perspectives, and there's no fighting. It's just all moving forward. It's all progressing. So an alignment that's out of response, that's based on our form principle, will show us that life's movement is demanding that response. You can't change the construct. This is a rhythm and a construct of life. And so life has thousands of patterns that are being in the flow. And they all help us move in a predictable, reliable pattern. So here we have the alpha. And so the throat center is looking for attention. We know that from the themes of the open center. And it has a capacity to affect other people. This, is really coming from the flow, a movement towards the future, and expressing your outer authority as a witness to your own life, to others on your path, is living out your potential to express a unique, differentiated identity. And what is the identity here? It's one who can see sort of where things are going based on the flow, and is ready to lead the way. A pattern, for your understanding, an example of a pattern. I thought I was doing that, so I don't know what to say at the moment. Maybe, let's see here. Well, I think this whole idea of leadership is part of it. It's a movement to, well, let's just keep talking about the different, maybe you don't have enough of the pattern yet of logic, right? Let's just keep looking and seeing where all the pieces fit, because where all the pieces fit is what creates the pattern. So we have the role of self in the G center. That is a role that is focused on and concentrated on the future. And it's sort of planning for that step by step. It's a logical process. And then you've got the ability, if you can get to the throat, to have a whole different life force expression that's being brought out into the world to be recognized, invited. And that's where you've got the expression that influences. the influential leader that can, be seen and, whoop. Hey everyone, are you still there? Can you hear me now? Hey everyone, can you hear me at this moment? Hello? Hi everyone, I'm here. Can you actually hear me there? So what happened is very abstract, so we'll talk about that in our next class. It came out of nowhere and my power went out. My screen went blank. I have a backup power supply. And so at the moment, I think I'm out of power, but no, I'm back on now. So that's what saved me. Yeah, what saved me was my battery backup. It kept me online long enough to have it recover. So yeah, that's because I'm a logical being who predicts the future and recognizes that these things can happen because they've happened other times in life. And so I predict these things and I make sure I have all the details and backup to prevent what would happen, which would have meant I would have gone away and we wouldn't have had class. Does that make sense? Is that a good example for you, Jasper? There's the pattern. But it was a predictable pattern that if you know that you are teaching online and that teaching online requires electricity, and if you don't have electricity, you won't be able to teach, then you have to look for, through experimenting, all kinds of different ways to guarantee in a predictable, reliable way that you'll have electricity, even if there's a possibility it won't be there. So yeah, we'll pretend that was my demonstration for you. Oh my gosh, life is so predictable. And not. We'll see the not in the next one. So here we have that alpha as I was trying to talk about it. And, it's just giving us our ability to express our identity and fulfill our role in life. Because it is, again, a way of expressing our authority from who we are, in a logical pattern. And so the role of the collective logic is to be the leader. The pattern of life that evolves gets shared. So the bulk of society is going to be able to go into the future. We rely on patterns that we discover work. We rely on things that are predictable. It offers that certainty. It offers that sense of security. There's, we went through something that could have been quite a messy thing just a minute ago. And yet now we're back on track. Now we're just moving forward as if nothing happened. There's no emotions, no one falling apart and worrying about anything. And do you see how calm it can be? We can just, when you've predicted it, you got it under control, you just move forward. This is what it's about. We're all, it's coming from the security, safety, and predictability that you can respond to through awareness of the splenic center. It's passing through this circuitry. It's part of it. These three gates that you see, we're just talking about one of the gates in the throat center, but the 3 gates in the throat center are all branching into different directions if you're, pointed towards the G center. The one we're talking about is the one that's moving to the in the direction of the future. You don't know what the future is going to bring, but you have a visual plan, and you share that plan with others, and the others will decide for themselves if your plan seems to be really a good plan and that you've identified the patterns that need to be fixed, and then they'll put their recognized faith in you as the leader, and that's when you get elected. So this channel of the alpha can be argumentative, debating in order to get elected. This is why elections always have these platforms of debate, to decide which leader you're going to elect in a democracy. This is a democracy that's being an example here. In a democracy, you debate different people's plans. That's why if a politician is not saying what their plan is, then if they don't have a plan, then why would we elect them? So everyone says, well, here's our plan for these. They have to point out all the things that need to be corrected, right? Every election has all the negative things that have to be corrected that are not going well, because it's part of logic. That's the correction part of logic, the 18 and the 58. And so these are the ones that now are going to have a platform. This is what, when you elect me, this is what I'm going to do. So it's going to debate. It's going to argue. It's going to say, no, that plan won't work. This is my plan, and this is why it'll work. We've tried that before. That didn't work. Or this person didn't deliver what they promised. This doesn't have promises it can keep. There's no ego here. Everyone's going to promise. And none of it's going to be something you can be guaranteed you can keep. You debate the correct direction for the future. That's what you do. And it's always organizing that force, that army on the, in the direction that it can move through. So politics are about a promise of something new and more secure in a pattern. And logic is intended to bring influence, that influential voice of reason. The channels of logic are all components of a model and a mechanical construct that's going to get us to a feeling of trust. It's about avoiding risk. You don't want to risk the future. You want it to be pretty clear and predictable. And so it's overly concerned with the future's safety and security, looking for the right formula. It's very different than, when you get into tribal kinds of energies. So here we'll look at the logical streams. There's the awareness stream of understanding that comes from, the way you conceptualize through the mind logically. And then there's what we call the awareness stream of taste. And taste is subjective, but not. Whatever is recognized as good taste is usually, what we see as trends in certain time periods. And I remember when I was growing up, and my mother was very logical and I was very logical in terms of patterns. And so you wanted to be accepted by others, and so you wore whatever the accepted patterns of clothes were, whatever the trend was, and in good taste. There was good taste and bad taste, and even now we judge people on that. Even people in Hollywood, some of these award ceremonies, they're not about awards anymore. They're about, what did you wear to the awards? That's where all the press is. That's where all the focus is who had the best dress and who didn't. And, this is getting down to patterns. And yet what we think collectively is good taste or bad taste changes. through the years, doesn't it? I was told you never mix stripes and polka dots or different patterns when in your outfit. There was a certain time that was just like, oh my God, what did you do? That doesn't work. And then now, you know, there's times when you watch what people are wearing and it's completely every kind of pattern you can figure out gets worn. It's just a matter of what's in good taste collectively, what's considered to be in good taste. So the fuel for the 58 is the pressure of the ongoing refinement of the pattern. I've got this gate and it's one that, you know, obviously I've taught these classes for years and over and over and over and over and over. It is definitely logical the way it comes out. I've got the 16, so it comes out, you know, in terms of what gets expressed. And even though it's the same class, there's always little variations to the pattern. Still the same pattern that I'm delivering, but I vary it based on what you ask for, based on different things that happen. And yet, over and over and over and over, as you do that, you will continue, and I continue to want to refine it. The pressure, the energy is really the right word. The energy is there for the ongoing need to keep refining the pattern. And that's without knowing necessarily what will be corrected unless the 18 brings that level of awareness that that's not quite right. Like Yi is wonderful at saying, hey, this book doesn't quite match the slides. That's makes perfect sense to me because Yi's got the 18th gate, right? That's her job is to say this doesn't fit. And my job is to say, you're right, it doesn't, and this is what needs to be refined. We're a great team there, Yi. So then you've got the possibility, if you can get to the 48, of a taste for what the pattern is in that you're experimenting with, that you either keep that going or you don't. I've been attracted my whole life because it bridges my wide split to 18s and 48s, especially if they have them together, and they're not going to have the 58 or the 16, which would then make me be compromised. And so when I get a taste of those 48s that have depth, and Ra was one of them, that taste for the depth of life is very attractive to me because I'm always looking for lots of depth to any system. I want to see that there's many, many different solutions that stay in a place that are very predictably going to solve something. Yeah, that's what's hanging 16's love. That's what allows that 16 to identify with that 48 as the right solution. So those are the things that you get hooked by. And not just hooked as a bad thing, but hooked as a part of a pattern that makes it okay to keep experimenting with it, identifying with it, repeating it over and over and over to get more and more depth, more and more insatiable ability to correct the pattern, to get it better and better for the future, to get it in a way that can be collectively shared by more and more and more people. It's all part of this. And so when you look at these two streams as two life forces, you start off in order to get to the expression of the awareness. What is the voice? The voice says, I experiment. I'm experimenting. I'm identified with this experiment. This is the manifestation of the experiment. I have basically stayed with it, and this is what I can express about it. But it starts with the channel of judgment. There's something that could be made better in the patterns of life. There's something that can still be corrected. There's something that still, we have the energy, you know, even though we're starved for energy, I've got the energy for this, and I recognize this needs to be, you know, corrected. And then you've got the channel of the wavelength that makes the final expression, the possibility of the expression, because this is the one, by the way, that's also called the channel of talent. You take that channel, that wavelength that is, you know, splenically being expressed and in its own way, and it gets recognized that that's a great pattern. You know, people that are musicians and they take someone else's song and they make it their own. They don't go outside the formula, so you don't recognize it. Sorry, Cecilia, I just saw you're waiting to get in. So they take that pattern and someone else's formula of music, and they play it, but they play it over and over and over until they can make it their own. And then it's like, we still recognize the pattern, but it's something that's better or worse. If it's worse, we won't say they're talented. We'll say, stay to the original, please. But you hear those people take off on these variations, and you know, that's what allows another flow, a different variation of the pattern. It's talent. We like that. So it's kind of hard to compete with society if you're just an individual or a family. You know, because when the trend takes over, or you know, in fact, it doesn't start as a trend. It starts as something brand new, and then it has to be accepted before people will, you know, will start the trend. And so at the beginning, it's just a fad. The thing that really becomes deeply part of the collective has to stand the test of time to then really be something that stays. I'll never forget, towards the very end of Ra's life, you know, he never knew at the beginning when I was studying with him if this was going to reach the tipping point to become a part of the collective. But once it's a part of the collective, it's not going anywhere. Even if things change in the future and there's something even bigger and better that other people are all jumping into, there's always, once you're in the collective, you don't go anywhere. There's someone, even now, that still practices different things from the past. Maybe they're not, you know, popular anymore, but you can still find a practitioner to do it, because once it's in the collective, it stays in the collective. So again, it may move out of popularity as a trend, but to become something that stays, it has to move past just being an in the moment fad of some new thing that then dies. Because if it dies, it's not part of the pattern. It's not really accepted. So we have the design of insatiability. You're never going to have it perfect. There is no such thing as it's now done, it's perfect. You can't find anything perfect in the logical side. And you recognize that. You see it happen over and over and over in life. And it's, you know, it's nothing that, it's a calm, cool, collected kind of understanding. And that's the nature of this. This 58 that began it is what's sharing a vitality of energy that is there to correct something. It offers an energy to correct the pattern and flow. And what does the 18 do? It challenges authority. That's what it does. Would you agree with that, Yi? Just as part of the 18. It's there too. It's got to, you know, not default. So then we've got the 48 and the 16. You know, we've got the 16 that is, you know, again, setting up a pattern that you'll repeat over and over and over. And in doing so, you're kind of setting up the possibility that something new and improved can now be expressed. You have to identify, though, with the pattern that you're going to repeat. Otherwise, you don't have the energy to stick with it. It's like those children that are, the parents want them to be able to master piano. Maybe the child doesn't have the energy for it, or have any real natural skills that they want to put to work. And they really don't have the energy to sustain that unless it's something they identify with. They really recognize the pattern from within that they repeat, and they have the recognition, the interest, the splenic awareness that this is a pattern they're identified with. Takes a lot of work to master. And those people that play certain sports, I remember my father liked to play golf, and he had multiple holes in ones in his lifetime. And yet, if he didn't go out there on a weekly basis, you know, he lost some of the skills. Who knows? Who knows why we drive our mothers nuts? There's always probably more to it than meets the eye. They love us and they hate us sometimes. Actually, my mom, well, she did. We could be hard at times. So this is kind of what this one's all about, is bringing this deep identification, you know, so that you can stay with something long enough to validate it, develop the necessary skills to master the pattern, move it forward towards perfection. You know, this system is logical. This really is one of those reasons why you got to stick with it. You're not going to get all this in its full depth immediately, right? It's kind of like some of the comments you guys have made of, oh, I went back and reread the book, and now it's making more sense. It's clear. Well, it's because you're going deeper and deeper and deeper in the pattern, and you're repeating the pattern, and I'm repeating the pattern over and over and over. It's not like I haven't told you a lot of this stuff before, but sometimes you just got to keep repeating it, right? Got to repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. Master it, master it, master it, and move it towards the future. Now, unless you're locked into the flow and the focus concentration of the precious energies there, the skills may never develop. That's why I give these assignments, even though I don't ask you to turn it in. I just say, hey, want to practice keynoting? If you do, then in the future, you'll be better and better and better at it. You will develop your skills at it. If you don't, then you won't. Maybe you don't have the identification with that yet. Maybe you'll never have it. You don't know. And so here we have the mastery of the pattern, the move towards perfection, the expression potentially that started with the need to correct, the desire, the energy to correct, and then the experimenting through the deep identification is where we focus our energy to develop the skills. So if you've got a child who's got the 48-16, you know, you just sit back and watch them, see what they're identifying with, see what they have the potential to develop as a talent, and you encourage them, you invite them. You see if they can stay with it. If they can stay with it, they're still identified with it. It's the creativity of the logical channel or circuit. This is where the creativity comes. You can master all kinds of things. And again, it can be very visual, very visual. I was told in this, in my Rave Cartography class, that this was a channel. Maybe it was what I read in the book. I don't remember, but I remember it stuck with me that this is, again, people with this channel. I think it was Richard Rudd's circuitry book. Oops, your microphone's on, Cecilia. So we hear, probably has been on since you came back in. I'm going to mute you. There we go. So I was told that this was, people with this could be good interior designers, again, people that come in and kind of in a space, do decoration. And if that makes sense, because these are life forces that really have a knack, if you really kind of pay attention on the visuals, is, yeah, and I do too, Annette, even though I don't have the 48, that doesn't matter. I just maybe don't instantly in the moment know what it is, but I know when it's outside of the pattern or not. And so I'll walk in a room and I'll know if it's all there or not, and I'll move it if it's not. And then it's like, that's the pattern. This is it. And it's, maybe you are competent there. And again, what you're seeing is that you're just never going to feel competent, because you could get better and better and better, and you're not good enough for what you would like to see, right? That's insatiable. So yes, this is what this kind of energy is doing. It's mastering patterns, moving towards perfection. It's never going to be absolutely perfect, so you can always change things up, change things around. And if it's something other people see as talent, you'll be recognized. They'll recognize. So the stream of understanding from a mental perspective starts with a pressure that's suspicious of patterns. It's fueling the potential awareness that would happen in the fourth gate and the Ajna Center, but it's just coming in with doubt. It's like, I doubt all the patterns, everything I see. I'm full of questions to see if those actually have an answer that could be reliable or not. It's the questions that drive it. And so the fourth gate is the receiver of questions that, through its own particular conceptual awareness, will judge what is suspicious in the pattern or not. That's how I can know what's going on in a room, because I've got the fourth gate, I've got the 17, I've got the 62. So I see, well, this is slightly off. This doesn't have the right relational dimensions that fit. And so you can start to see where things aren't quite right. My mom couldn't ever make, if I went away to school in the daytime and came home for lunch, I would instantly walk in, and if she had made any changes, because she loved to decorate too, she had a lot of the same kinds of activations. If she made a change and moved a little figure on one table to another place, I immediately saw it and would comment on it. Say, oh, you moved this. She'd say, well, do you like it? Do you think it looks good there? Because I could always tell. I love those puzzles that says find Waldo or whatever it is, because you had to, or what's wrong with the pattern. Oh boy, are those fun for someone that has my logical activations, because I could always figure out what was different between the two pictures, always. And it was fun, because that's what I was able to see. And the 17 is the visualizing of the pattern on when it's correct or not. And the 62 is the actual expression, the manifestation of the verbal expression of the pattern or not. That's where the details and facts come out. These are the facts. These are the facts that back up the opinion of what you visualized in the pattern is correct or not, that came from an awareness of what was the final way to take the suspicion out of the pattern, that answered the pressure that it was suspicious to begin with. All I did is I went backwards. Backwards or forwards, it all still leads in a logical direction, a conclusion in the end. So the mental ease mixed with doubt is where you start. You start with doubt, and guess what? As soon as you stop doubting, here's where that abstract kind of part of this comes in. You know, after you only quit doubting after, the doubt is complete. Doesn't mean it's going to stay complete. To move forward, there'll be something else to doubt. So the formalization of the four is the gate of answers. It's the gate of looking at the formula and looking at the conclusion that's possible, that's reliable. And of course, youthful folly is a great name because children keeping things, with an answer, you can give an answer to a child and they'll accept it. And, they'll accept any answer until they grow up to discover those answers really don't fit life, the way you really experience it. So you can see again how there's these kind of aspects of the frequency of this logical channel that has kind of its own more abstract nature to it. The mirroring of, what it's almost like how you can see the movement and the pressures of life that keep the logic and the abstract side, even though they're mirrors, there's still a connection between them to some degree. So yes, you've got this kind of mental energy, and what it's allowing potentially is a clear pattern and a progression of where things are going to go, so you can see what more questions are going to be raised that need answers. And so this is where logic is a beautiful fit in science. You're really able to kind of see step by step, this will lead to that, then that will lead to this, and then you can see where else you need to take those questions, because the formula seems to still hold true. So where are we going to keep going to find out where there might be a link broken in the logic? There's the expansion of the awareness. So it's a projected channel. It does require the invitation, life and the recognition from life. And it's, again, going to combine the functionality of the head center with the ajna center. And it's all there so that you can share your outer authority with others in terms of your understanding. And again, your sense of the future and visualization. And so there's the 1762. It's going to be a design of an organizational being. It has this gate of opinions and the keynote again of following. And what is it following? Well, it's following what came before it as the pressure and the logical sequence for the future. And it's taking that pattern and trying to follow up with, what it needs to express that pattern, and that's details. What are the right facts and details that I can share so that people can see that my opinion actually is backed up by facts? Not beliefs, but facts. Real hard, cold facts. Where's the facts? Just give me the facts. So I think or not. I think or not that this pattern that I've identified with is viable. And if you do, And you can convince others of that your facts, they'll accept it. And once it's accepted, it's part of the way we see things. This is what can, lead to the metamorphosis from awareness to the Maya that we live in, that is based on what we've accepted as what we see, as the way life is. So this is a very metamorphic force. It's an acceptance of patterns. You can look in a dictionary today and find all kinds of words that were not a part of maybe your grandparents' vernacular, and yet we can even take terms they would have used and make them mean the exact opposite of the way they would use it. And once we accept it, we all know what we're talking about. So it's organizing the facts and the details so everyone understands them, and then it's like, okay, we know what's going on in the pattern. This is the pattern. It's a vocabulary. It has to be expanded to express all the patterns that can be shared within life. That's why they have to keep adding things to the dictionary or adding things to our common use of language. The 62 is about naming things, the gate of naming. Rob gave these keynotes to the system. He basically named them. He had to identify the root of the formula in order to represent the name. That's what the keynotes really are about. So, with that in mind, everyone, wow, I'm kind of on time. About as close to being on time as I've ever been in a long time. There's my logical explanation. So, personal development, again, I've probably asked this before if you were in maybe another class with me, but would you like to provide a logical answer into why the channel of the flow of life is found in the understanding circuit? But I also have a fantasy exercise for you, and it's one that'll get you kind of warmed up and ready for the abstract discussion. What if you could have any channel in your design and would add it? You could have it extra. What would you select and why? Just any life force channel. What would you add to your matrix? Why did you select it? What do you think that would offer? And then for professional development, again, pick 2 collective channels to keynote. Practice these. I really enjoyed your sharing on the forum, Rick, about what you were witnessing with your friend. It was really wonderful. Thank you for taking the time to do that and to let us all participate in what you've been going through with your friend. It was really beautiful, really beautiful. So using these channel names instead of gate numbers, that would be a good exercise of practice too. So that's it for today. When we get back together next week, we'll go through the abstract channels. Any comments or questions? Okay, everyone. Well, have a wonderful rest of your week or weekend, and I'll see you back here next week. Bye for now.